Hello, Flat Earth believers. This is Darryl E Berry Jr. back with my 16th Flat Earth challenge and response. I've combined the responses and challenges into one series. My most recent Flat Earth challenge and Flat Earth response was Flat Earth Challenge 10 and Flat Earth Response 6, which was the conclusion based upon the observations I've been making on Flat Earth believers, both speaking with them as well as reading their writings and watching their videos, culminating in an interaction with 3 different flat earthers, one called DITRH, one called Horry, and one called Sleeping Warrior. I tried to have follow-up discussions with all 3. If I remember right, I couldn't get in, or at least DITRH wouldn't respond anymore. Horry was apparently upset. After our discussion, you could see his reaction at the end of the discussion. And Sleeping Warrior wouldn't speak to me again. According to him, I won't accept what he says. But you can find a link to all 3 videos in the description as well as right here in the video. Now on to this video. This is actually a challenge and response to a Flat Earth believer calling himself Mad World Earth. And one thing that piqued my interest was that he actually addressed the phenomena of the sun casting shadows underneath clouds. For instance, mountains having their shadows cast underneath clouds from the sun, as in the image that is in the title image for this video. So that actually piqued my interest when I saw that. So I was like, okay, let me make a video to address this. And if you look at the video, and this is straight off of his social media channel, you can see him explain that from his perspective, the shadow being casted underneath clouds from the sun is actually a reflection from the ground. So, you know, of course, when you look into it a bit more closely, it doesn't pan out. But I appreciate the fact that he tried. I appreciate the fact that he at least did something to try to figure it out or address the challenge that more scientifically minded people were putting forth to them. And it stuck out to me because I made a reply to somebody in social media with this image. So one of their claims, this Flat Earth believer named Keith Poker, or calling himself Keith Poker, was showing this image or this short video and trying to say that the sun is actually above the clouds and shining down on the clouds. So I posted this image of the sun casting a shadow of a mountain underneath the clouds, asking them to explain how this is so, given what he's saying. So far, the only response I've received is "think sea level." But me and another more logical person asking him to explain or elaborate this, and so far we haven't got a response. Maybe he will. But just scrolling through Flat Earth social media posts after that, I found this video here. And I thought, oh, awesome. So somebody actually is addressing that. So let's take a look at this person's claims. So as you can see, his claim is that sunlight is actually coming down from the sun, bouncing off the earth, and bouncing back upwards, casting a shadow underneath the clouds. So, well, it's an effort. It's a try. And he goes on to show some posts of people making those claims on social media. But you know, first there's the issue of what is that reflective to bounce sunlight off the earth so strongly as to make such a potent shadow underneath the clouds. And one of the little social media comments, he said water. In my experience with Flat Earth believers, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the first time he ever considered that the ground might not be so reflective, is when he was asked that question. But then he said water. And one of the responders mentioned that from that mountain, the nearest waterway is 100 miles away. And of course, that doesn't address when the same thing happens at dawn and the shadow is on the other side from the water, or vice versa. Um, but it's not even necessary to go into, does every single instance of this have large bodies of water or some kind of reflective surface next to it, like the reflective surface he put at the bottom of his little cardboard box. All we have to do is look at the actual way, at least so far, most or all flat earth believers say the sun operates. And to correct myself, I can't even say most or all anymore, because one thing I've observed in flat earth believers, when it was first brought to my attention, they made very definite claims about the sun. And for instance, they tried to make it correlate with the experiment where people use the shadow of the sun at noon with a stick in the ground or a well, or a stick 100 miles away. And they say, well, that still makes sense if the sun is really this close and this small. But of course, it didn't take much for people to bring out some trigonometry and prove that those angles don't match with what we see in reality. So then I noticed they keep changing what the sun is, and now the sun is some kind of electromagnetic thing or some kind of hologram and all kind of nonsense. But let's look until they actually model that. Let's go ahead and look at the most prevalent model I've seen, which is a sort of piece of dish type planet with the sun, sort of revolving around over the surface of the Earth. Now, if we take a look at this, when the sun is rising on this supposed flat Earth with a revolving sun, when the sun is right at the point where it's having a sunrise, is not directly to the east. As you can see, is basically to the northeast, because it's moving around in a circle. So whereas in real life, when we see the sun rise in the east, like for instance, in the middle, in fall, when it's like right on the equator or what have you, it rises directly to the east. So directly to the east. It doesn't come in at an angle from the northeast, as it would have to be if it was going around in a circle. It's coming directly from the east. And the shadow that it casts on the clouds is in direct line from the light source, as any light source we can have, even a light in our room. So therefore, the sun is at dawn, the sun is rising in the east, the mountain is in the middle, and thus the clouds are west of the mountain, directly in line from the light source. But if the sun was really revolving around over a flat Earth and rising actually from the northeast, then the shadow would have to be towards the southwest, and that's not what we see. We see the shadow directly from the rising of the sun on the east, so the shadow is always to the west. So what they're saying simply does not match reality. So what would they have to do to make this make sense? What you would need to do, Mad World Earth, to show that what you're saying is true, is also explain why we see the shadow directly to the west when the shadow is being cast underneath the clouds at dawn, or directly to the east when the shadow is being cast underneath the clouds at dusk. But according to your, at least the prevalent flat earth model of this resolving sun, the shadow would have to actually be to the southwest at dawn and to the southeast at dusk. So what you need to do is either present a model that's more accurate than the regular globe model that matches what we see in reality, and somehow explain how on your flat earth the shadow still is to the direct east or direct west, directly from the light source, or where the sun is at this period of time, and so on and so forth. So it's just doesn't make sense according to this little piece of pie revolving sun model. So do you have a different, better model of the flat Earth that can explain this and explain the angles and how it works with your um, sunlight bouncing off the Earth um, conjecture? Looking at the images on your social media page, it seems as if you subscribe to the sort of dinner plate pizza circular flat Earth modality. So my challenge to you then is to explain why the angle of the shadow matches the placement of the sun in the globe model, with the Earth rotating around the sun and at least revolving around the sun and rotating to make day and night, and does not match any model I've seen of the flat Earth sun, which the only one I've seen is the sun rotating or revolving around over the top of the Earth. And again, that means it'll have to rise and set at an angle, not actually due west or due east. So where's your placement of the sun in the flat Earth, or how do you explain this odd behavior of light where it reflects at an angle, or however you want to, however you can explain it? I look forward to you explaining why this doesn't make sense on a flat Earth model when you say that the world is really flat. So that's my response and my challenge. I look forward to any response you give in social media or another video or what have you. And it doesn't have to be just Mad World Earth. Any of you flat Earth believers, if you have the right or correct or accurate model, let us know where the sun really is, and so on and so forth, and we can go from there. We can talk on social media. We could even talk on a live or recorded talk and break this down. Darryl E Berry Jr. out.